I think we're back.
Yeah, we're back.
We could see. Okay, so hopefully that'll go uninterrupted, or maybe I will have to edit it a little bit. But if you can just repeat, because I just want to make sure the question that I had asked before some technology came in was in your book, when you set out to write it, and you had gotten some counsel from your friends, some advice that you had this great podcast and helping others. So then that led to how you were writing the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I never really ever imagined that I would ever write a book about my career. I liked reading other people's, but I was like way not confident enough to do something like that. And after I did a Broadway show, I felt inspired to really share more with younger dancers and the public at large about what a ballet dancer's life is really like. And someone was like, "Oh, maybe you could start a blog." And I was like, "I don't want to talk about myself. It's just so unnatural for me." And so I felt comfortable with people writing or recording in their questions about being a dancer, and then I would respond, and that felt more true to me, and not so ostentatious, and that's kind of how the book grew. It wasn't like I want people to read about me. It was I want to share my lessons that I've learned in this career with the world, and I also want people to know what it's really like, the work that you put in to be a ballet dancer. I think that's interesting for everybody.
I mean, it really is. I mean, sometimes people say, well, I don't want to know what goes on behind the curtain.
Ah,
Speak, like they want to keep that, kind of illusion. And just to digress for a little bit, one moment, but I thought it was interesting that in the before times for you, you said, let's just get this over with, or let's just get on, like only an hour to go. But then you really started to enjoy the performances. And I thought that was so revealing how you said that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when you're in the audience, you're just like waiting to see what people come up with, and you're just seeing that end product. But like someone's whole life and experiences, and their whole, even that down to that day, is going to change the way that performance is. And if they're in a good space and they're, confident in themselves and they're empowered by the people that are around them, they're going to do much better than they would if they were, doubting themselves. And we're really just human up there. We're making the impossible possible, but we're susceptible to tripping and falling or
Right.
forgetting something or, just having a miscommunication with a partner. Like anything is possible. We're just regular human beings. And so I think for people to know all of that work it takes to do what we do, and we then still make it look so perfect,
I
I
know.
think people will appreciate the art form more. So I've always felt like unveiling that curtain and into what we do is only going to create more fans.
That's a good point, so it's like the rawness that comes about, so that they would have a greater appreciation because you overcome all of this. It's not like some, you
And
know,
because they see how hard it is. When you see someone do something perfectly, it looks easy. That's our goal, to make it look easy. But it's not easy. It's super, super hard. And the more easy you've made it look, the more work is behind it. And I know this is true because when I was at the beginning of my career, I had a lot more like slips and falls on stage because I was still figuring out how to make my point shoes just perfect. And when I would fall big time on stage, it was when I got the most applause at the end because
oh,
suddenly they saw I was just human. And they were
yeah.
like, "Oh, wow, this is actually hard what she's doing." And those aren't like tennis shoes she's running around in. Those are like satin things that are slippery. And suddenly, like, there was a greater appreciation for it. And it was like the audience was on my side. And so I think the more that our fans can see us as real human beings
Mm.
and what we can attain as well, in addition, I think it's only great for our art form.
Oh, that is an excellent point. And here I'm going to slip in a question. One of the um, I'll say family contacts from my book, The Hamptons and Long Island Homegrown Cookbook. Uh, One of their granddaughters or nieces is in your ballet. So she's in the SAB, and she
Hmm.
was a Nutcracker. Her name is Vera Mashmore. But I asked her, I said, "Do you want to ask a question to Megan?" And she said, "Yes." So her question was, do you ever have a time when you really don't feel like dancing or performing, but then you go out and dance sort of the excitement of a lifetime, or you get the reviews, but maybe before you go out, she's asking, maybe you don't
Yeah.
really feel like it.
My mom's always told me that I never once didn't want to go to ballet.
Huh?
I feel like maybe there's some after school activities that kids are having to like get a little push from their parents to show up consistently. And I never had that. I always wanted to go to dance.
Mm.
And um, it's really been the same as I've been a professional. I mean, when something is your profession, you don't have a choice if you want to do it or not. That's your
I
job to go in
agree.
and do it every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And there's days when we're tired. There's ballets that we sometimes don't enjoy doing. That was a revelation to me as a young student when a professional told me that you're going to have to dance some things you don't like sometimes. And I was like, what?
What?
And it's true. I've had ballets where I literally have had bosses come to me and give me a pep talk like, you got to get on board with this. I know you're not into this. And I've had to really, put on that happy face and get
Hmm.
it done. But for the most part, it's a complete genuine expression of joy. And I'm not having to put on any pretend faces. I absolutely love what I do. Um, and I think that's a real important thing for parents and young kids to know is like you can't force this on anybody. It's not going to go well. This has to be deep down an inner drive of your own to and I think in anything that you want to pursue, you can't be forced into what your mom wants you to do. It has to be something that you take real pleasure in and something that's made fun. The process has to be fun. And and I've really enjoyed the process of my job like the entire time. I think that's why I've had success coming back from having all my babies. I enjoy that, the discipline and the work. That's part of the fun to me is like seeing, oh, how can I challenge myself? Can I do this? And I like that.
Would you want your daughters to become ballerinas?
I would be open to it if they wanted to. I mean, my world is ballet right now. So my toddler, she's watches videos of me doing the Nutcracker, and she loves to put on little tutus and dance around to Mama's dance. She calls it. When the
Oh,
Sugar Plum Fairy music comes on, she goes, "Oh, it's Mama's dance."
yeah. I love
And I love that, but I also am super aware that it's a very specific, this profession calls for very specific, many different things to come together. The body has to be, made for it. It's not, you got to have the right flexibility in your joints and your muscles and proportions. And so it's so, and then do you even like doing it? Like all these little puzzle pieces have to come together. So
it.
will I offer them the opportunity to pursue it if they want to? Yes. Will there be any push from my side? Absolutely not. I I don't need them to do what I do. I'd love for them to find their own thing, and I'd love to experience different worlds through whatever they pursue.
Right, right. That's good. No Auntie Mame kind of a thing here. But and going back to your book, like how did you work that in? I mean, for me, writing is a profession, also, but it's still like you have to push yourself. They say it's a job. You can't do it when you're inspired. So when you're on a deadline, I mean, I don't know whether it's Penguin Random House
Yeah.
that published it. Did they give you a deadline that you had to meet?
We worked on a comfortable deadline for me and just figured which time of year would be a good time to publish the book. And then we were like, okay, which year is possible to make that happen in?
Mm.
So, I actually wrote this very casually and there was no like crazy time pressure. It was over a couple years and the pandemic certainly helped. So it was very, very casual, very, no super deadlines. So that was nice because I really what did have the ability to write only when I felt super inspired by a thought. And there were times actually when I was like, I don't think I'm in the right headspace to write right now, and I have time right now, but I just don't think anything good's going to come out. So I wouldn't write, because I would rather wait until I felt really, ready to say something of proper consequence than just force something out and then have to edit and edit and edit.
And then did they send it, like you sent it to them, they edited, send it back? Was there a lot of that back and
Exactly.
forth to set it up?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd say for each chapter there was like 3 back and forths. I'd send a really rough copy, and then they were like, okay, this story's not applicable. You went way too long on a tangent there. Flush this thing out more. That would be interesting to people, and kind of guidance like that.
Yeah, it gets
And
like to the zen of it, the whole
yeah, and then helping me kind of like structure, like, starting off with little story and then going into something deeper. That was something I learned from them, and that was super helpful. And we kind of got a formula for each chapter of how it would be structured. And
I
yeah,
love when
I think they're really just helpful in like eliminating the extra stuff that I didn't need to talk about.
Getting to the zen of it. In writing, they always say show, don't tell. And, you're a visual artist, but I like the way you use so many examples, because I thought the lessons in the book can resonate for all of us, not
Totally.
just being a dancer, but, how to overcome the challenges. But I want to ask you more about that. But first, I wanted Bill to zoom in, because before I forget, I want to ask you, how did you come up? Like, I thought it was such a departure for you to show like you're in sneakers here, right?
Yeah, actually, that was a photo shoot I did for Cole Haan. So I'm wearing Cole Haan's there.
Oh,
Yeah, me and 2 other ballerinas in the company, we did like a 6-year contract with Cole Haan, and like at one point I was like huge on the front of their storefront on Fifth Avenue and at Columbus Circle, and that was really fun. So my entire closet is filled with Cole Haans.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience, and we did 4 or 5 different photo shoots over the course of all of that time. So that's where that photo came from. And I don't know, there's some dancers that go into this to a photography studio and they're constantly making content and taking photographs, and I'm just really not into that. I like performing. I'm not into like posing. I like to move and make something happen. I don't know, I'm just not into like making content like that. So I really didn't have that much to choose from. And
Oh,
when we were preparing for, I have performance shots, and then I have my Cole Haan stuff. And really, other than that, I've never really done portrait stuff of my dancing. And when we were putting this book together, I was pregnant with twins at the very end when we were looking for a picture. I was like, well, I can't certainly go and make a picture right now. So I sent them everything I had, and they liked this. And I think one reason it works well is because I'm dancing, but I am in tennis shoes. So it's like kind of showing like
yeah.
how my book is applicable to the everyday person.
Yes, and that's what I took away from it. So I love that story. That's great, because like you're so authentic and repurposing things, which is just brilliant, and it sort of reinforces that you have all of these different, like like you see yourself through this spectrum, of the different things that you do. But I posted yesterday on my Instagram, because I said to people I was so excited to have the opportunity to interview you, and I really enjoyed the book. It was such a fast read for me, because it was interesting about your life, but also about the life lessons, I think, that went along with it. Did you have, like, was there such clarity about those life lessons, or did you have to really think about what am I going to impart to?
No, how we first fleshed out this book, my first editor, who she was a young editor at Penguin, and she was running a marathon. And she was listening to my podcast, and she wrote me on Instagram, your advice is helping me do something completely out of the ballet world. And I'm an editor at Penguin. I kind of think you have a book here. So we met up and fleshed out 10 different life lessons. And really what we did was we just met together, and I was like kind of just riffing on my biggest lessons in my career. and some of them were personal and some of them were professional. And we found, stories that went behind those experiences and those lessons learned. And kind of once we realized we had 10 good life lessons and chapters, we were like, okay, I think there really is something there. But we first had to see if there was anything there. And I realized, like, there's just things that I could not do without now. Like, I moments of learning certain, little wisdoms here and there that I still rely on day to day in
Mm-hmm.
my profession. Like,
Yeah.
those, they'll always be with me. So this wasn't like a stretch. These are really kind of daily mantras, how I live by.
Yeah.
But I didn't start out this way. It was a learned process.
I love it because to me, to me, it amplifies what I'm trying to do with Ladies Who Lunch conversations, where that, like I said, that idea of, the concept that ideas have agency and you put it out there. So you have your podcast, someone comes to you and say they're learning something from you that they can apply, and then it turns into a book. I mean, that is just, and I love that you seem to have this curiosity about life.
Yeah.
I know people sometimes feel hopeless, but especially with coronavirus and so on, but you look for those silver linings, I think, and you've been able to show that you can do that, right?
Yeah. The older I get, the more I realize I've really got, my dad is like this super positive, optimistic person all the time. And I
Mhm.
think my brother and I used to sometimes find it like, come on, is he ever gonna, like, you know, be frustrated? But my brother and I, we really have a lot of him in us as we get older. We stay in
Mhm.
that positive mindset. And I think my divorce was really this time where I really realized, oh wow, I'm not going to go down the deep rabbit hole. If I'm, and then the coronavirus and the pandemic as well, like, if I am given a really difficult situation, what are you going to do? Just sit and cry about it, or like find the positive? And with all of the difficulties I've had in life, I haven't had many, but I've had, you know some were harder than others. um I I It's just the fabric of who I am. Like, I can only look for the positive. And I remember, yeah, actually being in the middle of my divorce and like writing to a friend about what happened, and they were like, "That's what I love about you. You always look for the positive." And I was like thinking, "Really? I do? I didn't see myself like that." But when push comes to shove, I am not going to sit and have a pity party for myself. I know my self-worth. I know what I'm capable of. I'm not going to let a pandemic or a divorce keep me from, fulfilling my potential.
I just admire that so much. I mean, to me, I always say, I'm not like a Hallmark card, but I was, where everything is just like, one of these things. But when you're born with that, too much of that happiness gene, you just can't help but sort of emote that. So you do look for, like you say, like you're not going to have the pity party, you're going to go for it. But I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions here, just like in the, sort of, what do they call that, the wrap up round or whatever. But do you have a favorite ballet? And you've danced so many, from I'm looking at Coppelia to Emeralds to A Midsummer Night Dream, of course, to Nutcracker. Do you ever get tired of some? Do you have a favorite one? And do you have a favorite?
um I I got tired of my Broadway show that I did, because that was every night for a year. So I definitely can get tired of things, but if it has good music to it, that helps a lot. Coppelia, you mentioned, and that was something that really started off my career, and it's very still suited to me as I grow older. So I would have to say that's the most special ballet to me.
That's beautiful. Do you have a favorite partner?
Um, you know, I will say my favorite partner is always anybody willing to, work hard with me in the room and show up. I've had some partners that were always a little bit distracted and, would miss rehearsals here or there. And I'm like, no, this is a team effort. Like, let's boost our morale together. Yeah, I need somebody to help me go. So,
I see how you boost up your partners and your dance partners too, which is great.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a team effort out there. You don't want to just be like,
yes.
oh, see you in the show. So I really appreciate someone that's willing to put the work in and show up in daily grind with a smile.
Good. It's the journey that's reward in
Absolutely.
itself, I think. But do you have a greatest or a best accomplishment,
Mm, greatest accomplishment.
or maybe
Um,
three? You have so many. Maybe pick
pro-
three.
probably, I would just say successfully divorcing and moving on. I think
Wow.
that was just a huge learning lesson for me. And like, I look at my life as having gone one direction and then having been severely rerouted another. And I never would have imagined I would be here today. I was going on such a different path,
Mm-hmm.
and I love where I am, and I wouldn't have my three children if it wasn't for that huge
Yeah.
reroute. So,
I
you
know.
know,
I often would say to people in business or my teams, but sometimes people just, they have a consequential life, meaning they just go along and whatever happens to them, they say, well, what can I do? I did my best. And I'm like, no, not really. Like you can manage it. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I had is that
yeah.
you manage, whether it's the divorce, your dancing. I just admire that so much about you. You said like, no, I'm getting through this in your way. It was your own way to
Yeah.
get through that
Yeah,
divorce.
but I will say I wasn't naturally like that. I was just going with it. And
Mm.
okay, I was like flowing with the breeze, and then I talk about it in my book. I started meditating when I was about 30, and it just changed all my decision making and my perspective. It really gave me a lot of perspective and agency in my life to choose what I wanted to do and be and who I wanted to surround myself with.
That I know, I love that, and I do meditation every day too. So I sort of had that simpatico, with you. Another quick question is, who's your biggest influence? Who was on you? Yeah.
Probably my mom. My mom and my dad. I talk to my mom every day on the phone. They were just here for 2 weeks. We were all crammed together in my two-bedroom apartment. So I have three kids, me and my husband, and my parents for 2 weeks over Christmas.
Oh my
But
God,
we had a great time, and
wonderful.
yeah, my parents are a great example. They're not in the industry at all, but um they're always the person I run things by, both of them. If I'm concerned about, you know, a situation with someone, I'll run the language of a message by them. Like everything, they're just a big part of my life, and um, yeah, I love them, and they're great.
I know that gives you such a foundation. I remember reading about Stephen Jobs and he said about his adopted parents, but they gave him a sense of exceptionalism, and I
Hmm.
think that's true. My own father would say, we hope to raise you and all our children to become independent and to do what you want to do, but they gave you that sense of exceptionalism, and I think that's very key, even with your friendships. Like everyone
Yeah,
is such a blessing in that sense. Don't you agree?
yeah, yeah, and choosing things of quality, not quantity.
Yeah, yeah. Well, having written a cocktail book, I have to ask, do you have a favorite cocktail?
Ooh, I love a Manhattan.
Oh, that's so perfect. That's one of mine too. And being in New York, of course you would
Yeah,
love a
I
Manhattan.
love a Manhattan with a good cherry.
Oh, good. And any champagne cocktails?
um, I think all of them.
It's that time of year.
My husband's French, so if there's ever any bubbly, it's very well used. And actually, if it's the real champagne, we're not to mix it with anything, right?
It's so true. I have to share with you, separate from this, but I once, because I write about food and drink also, but I was at a champagne tasting, and it was the first time, I'm going to forget the name, but they took me outside. It was in Lower Manhattan, and they had a big knife, and you cut the top off, like of the top of
Oh
the
wow,
bottle. Yeah, and with a sword. Like I'm like, only in New York could you be on the street with the knife cutting us, like people like walking past with strollers or whatever. But I did it, and I was like so shocked. But they said in those days that's the way, you uncork
crazy!
champagne. So it was really crazy.
That's fun.
So, well, I cheers to you, Megan, and the book will definitely, maybe we'll come up with some fun thing when I post about it on the blog that maybe you can have an autograph, a copy that we can send to.
I would love to.
your fans, because it's such a great read. So I congratulate you on that, and hopefully we can get back to seeing you on the stage again soon. So
Yes, we're planning on a winter season. It might be a little delayed, but we're getting back to work tomorrow. We're rehearsing, so
cheers. That's to you.
thanks so
I
much.
thank you so much. So we'll be in touch, but thank you.
Bye, Leanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Bye bye.